Thankfully, though, you have scans at your proposal. Your proposal? Exposal is what I was trying to say. Hello, and welcome to another video by Surge Media. Today, we're going to be ranking all of the defenders for Terrorist Hunt, or Training Grounds, whatever you want to call it, and we're going to see how they compare to each other. As I said, it's a ranking. We're going to be primarily focusing on solo and hard difficulty, but of course this list is mostly the same for, if you have more people or on different difficulties. Of course, I will mention if certain characters are better or worse on different difficulties if I feel like that's necessary. Now, as last time, I will only be focusing on the primary gadgets, and the weapons won't really be of a concern, except for Clash, because her primary gadget is physically attached to her weapon, that being the shield. If the secondary gadgets have a special interaction with the primary gadget, then the secondary gadgets will be talked about. There was another part, you may have seen it, where I talked about the attackers. You can go ahead and watch that if you want, but that's not really relevant to this one because we're going to be talking about the defenders this time. And although we're not necessarily focusing on secondary gadgets as like a whole, if I feel like there are certain, unique aspects to secondary gadgets that are particularly useful, then I will mention them. All right, let's start off this list. Number 32, Vigil. Yeah, Vigil is literally useless, just like Dokebi. He does absolutely nothing. There's no lion scans, there's no drones, so there's no point of choosing him if you're actually trying to win. In fact, using his gadget, because you have the static sound effect, actually makes it harder to hear. So using Vigil will actively make it harder for you to actually win. So yeah, if you're actually trying to win or using the most strategic operator, Vigil, literally bottom of the barrel, absolutely useless. If only he could go invisible like he does in Extraction. Actually, that would probably be a bit too overpowered. Number 31, Mozzie. Yeah, Mozzie's basically just as useless because there's no drones. So there's no drones for you to capture and, position them or whatever. So yeah, Mozzie's pests basically serve no function. That being said, why is Mozzie one step above Vigil? Well, the pests, if you hit an enemy with it, will do 5 or so damage. Actually, I'm not even sure how much damage it is. 5, 10, whatever. It's a very minimal amount of damage. For all intents and purposes, completely insignificant, not even relevant. But, if there's that 0.0001% chance that you're out of ammo in your primary and secondary, and the enemy's too far away to reload, you can hit him with the pest and he might die. But considering that that is not at all an advisable strategy, I would say Mozzie is basically just as bad as Vigil. After doing some tests, I'm actually not even sure if it does any damage at all. I really have been trying to get it to kill people, and it just doesn't work. So, yeah. Still better than Vigil. Number 30, Jaeger. The problem is that any good place where you could put an ADS, where it could potentially destroy a projectile, would immediately get shot by the terrorists. And, that's not very useful if you have an ADS that gets immediately destroyed. Even with careful placements, it'll get shot anyways, or it won't even destroy the grenades. Plus, grenades are very rarely a threat to begin with, since the only grenades that are being thrown by the terrorists are the smoke grenades. Literally, his gadget is more useful as a distraction to distract the terrorist for the 2 seconds they take to destroy the gadget immediately, rather than actually using it to destroy smoke grenades. It is very not good. That being said, there are some very rare scenarios where you'll actually be able to destroy one smoke grenade. And considering that's technically more likely than getting a kill with the pest, that is why Jaeger is above Mozzie. However, if you really want to make the best use out of Jaeger's gadget, what you can do is use his shotgun to break open the bottom of a wall and place his ADS at the bottom of it. This is pretty much the only way you can get his gadget to actually destroy grenades without getting the ADS destroyed itself. Number 29, Caveira. Yeah, you can't interrogate terrorists, and the terrorists don't care too much about sound, so just like Nook, her only usefulness exists in the fact that it's easier to hear enemies while you're moving.
Hostile insertion. Prepare to engage.
At least this exists indefinitely, but obviously will be useless if you aren't listening to your game. Honestly, it's a toss-up between Caveira and Jaeger on who's more useless. I would put Caveira higher on the list if you're actually listening to the game, because being able to hear, movement and potentially the terrorists shooting or shuffling around, I would argue that that is more useful than what Jaeger brings, but obviously if you can't listen to the game, then that very slight benefit is completely useless, and I would technically put Jaeger above Caveira in that instance. But for this ranking, I'm going to put Caveira slightly above. Number 28, Bandit. Since the terrorists only breach with exothermic charges in the vast majority of cases, it doesn't make sense to reinforce walls, and instead, just shoot the exothermic charge once it goes off. Because of this, electrifying walls is kind of pointless, especially because the batteries can very easily be shot. Same problem with electrifying wire. If the wire goes, so does the battery. Trying to electrify a wire to do damage to enemies is basically asking them to shoot the battery, which they will. But you still might do like 10 damage to an enemy, so better than nothing. You could theoretically cover and watch over the battery to make sure they don't get destroyed, but at that point, what are you doing? They're going to get shot from a different angle. You're just asking for trouble. What Bandit is good for is when you use it on an already destroyed wall. Sometimes you aren't fast enough, or aren't paying attention, or can't hear, and you aren't able to stop a wall from being destroyed by an exothermic charge. With Bandit, you can go back and reinforce and electrify the wall so they can't break through it again. Number 27, Mute. Mute. What a fall from grace. Mute used to be one of the very best operators on this list. In fact, for a time, he was number 1. But after the change so that terrorists don't use breaching charges anymore, he's actually not very useful at all. And with exothermic charges, like I said, not reinforcing and shooting the exothermic rounds, I don't know, I said exothermic rounds, it's exothermic charge. And with exothermic charges, like I said, not reinforcing and shooting the exothermic charges is more viable. That being said, just like with Bandit, if they do blow up a wall, he can go back and make it safe again. Unlike Bandit, he can actually safely cover up to 8 walls instead of just 4, and not only that, he can pre-place jammers on unreinforced walls as well to prevent any and all possibilities of breaching in the first place. Thankfully, the change to make the affected area a sphere radius instead of the cylindrical that it used to be doesn't affect them really that much in this mode. Don't get me wrong though, breaching isn't completely removed from the game, it's just significantly toned down, and countering it is not as necessary in most situations. But if you really want to make sure that an area is safe, Mute can do the job pretty well. Number 26, Wamai. In comparison to Jaeger, you're actually much more likely to capture grenades before your device gets destroyed. If you place them in the right positions, the terrorists will not shoot at the magnets, allowing it to exist until it does its job. The only thing it'll really ever do is pick up smoke grenades, but that's not entirely useless. Picking up smoke grenades can be a good indicator for when they are about to breach a wall, which is something you might not notice if you are too far away from the smoke grenades being thrown, so you can't hear it, or you just simply can't hear the game at all because you're not listening. So yeah, because the magnets will tell you the projectile was captured, in that instance it'll actually help you out and give you an idea, oh, they're about to breach. Also, it makes it far easier to pop around the corner and kill anyone trying to breach, since the smoke grenade that was grabbed presumably will not be where it was supposed to be and will be out of the way. I would recommend trying to throw them somewhat higher so that, you can potentially see their feet and shoot them. If frag grenades were more common, he would be much higher on the list, don't get me wrong. But since they basically don't exist at all, you might actually be better off using number 25, Warden. His glasses do kind of change the lighting a bit, which makes it slightly easier to see enemies in some situations, especially through explosions. After they breach a wall, then if you have your glasses on, then all the debris and smoke that's in the way, you can see right through it. But flash grenades seem to be fairly uncommon, sometimes non-existent. As I mentioned before, breaching is not very common. Again, hard difficulty is what I'm mostly focused on. His gadget is really only useful to himself, so if you're playing with multiple people, I would actually recommend Wamai over Warden, since multiple people will be able to take advantage of the smoke being out of the way. But for solo, because his glasses don't have a limit to them, he's slightly more useful. Again, being able to see through smokes has about the same usefulness as I said for Wamai, in that, if they place down a smoke grenade, you can peer around the corner and shoot them through the smoke, and that's not obscuring you. Number 24. Kapkan. With 5 traps that only do slightly more than half damage, when placed in the right positions, it can get 2 kills, maybe 3 if you're very lucky. Damaging the enemies is basically pointless other than giving away their location. You do have to be smart about positioning to make the most of it, or at least place multiple traps on the same door, so that way it'll instantly kill them, or you could use one at a time to let them know that they're coming from a specific angle while also doing damage. Though this isn't much more useful than using a proximity alarm, since the amount of health a few terrorists have won't really play a major factor in whether or not you're going to win. And unlike proximity alarms, these gadgets will get destroyed after use. Still, though, a couple free kills, basically, is what you get, so I would say it's better than nothing. But honestly, if you're looking for other traps, I wouldn't use Kapkan. Number 23. Frost. Yeah, Frost is, it's basically 3 free kills, and that's about it. They walk into the Frost trap, and they die instantly. So, I would say that Frost is only more useful than Kapkan because she has one more Frost trap that's basically always going to guarantee to get a kill. So, yeah. Also, these traps can be placed on most ground surfaces, making it a bit more versatile. And thankfully, you don't have to worry about the terrorists actually shooting the Frost traps. They'll just walk onto them. But, like I said, you only get 3 of them, so you get 3 free kills, and, you kind of get to know where people are coming from, but other than that, yeah, not too great. Number 22. Thorn. Thorn, Frost, and Kapkan, they all have approximately the same issues. They basically just give you a couple of free kills, and that's about it. In some instances, she's worse than Frost, but in some instances, she's better. The biggest upside with the Razor Bloom is that they can kill multiple enemies at the same time with a single gadget. And the same most certainly cannot be said about the Frost Traps. The big downside to her is that the Razor Bloom is somewhat inconsistent. Her gadget isn't guaranteed to get a kill, and if you don't place your gadgets properly, they might not get any kills. Still, if you use barricades and barbed wire, you can fairly consistently get at least 1 kill, sometimes multiple kills, and the fact that she has the potential for multiple kills with just a single one of her uses gives her a slight edge over Frost. But for the most part, about as bad. Number 21. Lesion. With Lesion, his goo mines can either be used for gaining intel or for lazy kills. The kills you're getting, though, are very slow, however, so much so that you would kind of need to go out of your way to let the goo kill them instead of naturally killing them yourself. That being said, if you're on a big map, or you're on a map with a lot of long corridors, you can absolutely take advantage of the goo's deadly potential if you play it right. Back when his goo mines did damage just from stepping on them, as well as the fact that you could see them no matter the distance through walls and all that stuff, he actually used to be much better because, he was actually really good in terms of getting info. But yeah, this is where he's at now. That being said, other trap operators exist if you're looking for kills, and proximity alarms exist if you're looking for intel, but considering Lesion can kind of do both, it's not half bad. He does have a lot of them. Number 20. Ella. You get 3 opportunities to stun enemies. Not kill, just stun. In some ways, that's a bad thing, but in other ways, that's a good thing. The gadget not being able to kill means it can be placed near the hostage without worry of the hostage taking damage. Because it's a gadget you can quickly throw in a pinch, wow, goddammit. Because it's a gadget you can quickly throw in a pinch, her gadget can be used aggressively rather than just as a trap. If you're in a tight spot, you can temporarily disable a few enemies to buy time to either reload or take cover or maybe, just maybe, revive the hostage if you're lucky. The big problem is that the enemies won't be stunned for long, so it might be rather hard to make good use of her gadget. But there is no denying its usefulness when it matters most. If the enemies are surrounding the hostage, the Gershmont mine will be able to do what the Nitrocell can't. Number 19, Recruit. Never underestimate the power of Nitrocell plus Deployable Shield. Jokes aside, he isn't as good as he is on attack, but he still has a lot of usefulness with his secondary gadgets that can all be refilled. With a combination of either Nitrocell, impact grenades, or proximity alarm, along with having bulletproof camera, barbed wire, or deployable shield, everything other than deployable shield can be replenished, so you can actually have a fairly versatile setup. I wouldn't really use impact grenades and barbed wire, they're kind of meh, but everything else is actually really good. Because Recruit's whole thing is the fact that he only has secondary gadgets, I guess this is the opportunity for me to start to actually talk about the secondary gadgets and how useful they are. Let's start off with Nitrocells. They're pretty good. They can clear out a number of enemies. They're very quick to throw out and detonate, and they're very useful for if you're about to, try to revive the hostage. If the hostage goes down, you can throw down a Nitrocell. Impact grenades, arguably the least useful in Terrasant. If you wanted to make rotations, you could just use a shotgun, but obviously the impact grenade is there for if you don't have a shotgun. So in those cases, it's actually pretty good. Proximity alarms, by far the best, or at least in my opinion, the best of all of the out of Nitrocells, impact grenades, and prox alarm. I think prox alarm is the best out of those three. Reason why is simply because you can place them down, enemies walk by them, and if once they do, they'll give away their position. And knowing exactly where they're coming from, because you get a notification on screen, very useful indeed. Next up, we have bulletproof cameras. These were actually pretty good in the past, even before they got the new update. But with the new update, they're even better, because now you can rotate the camera around, look left and right. You can use the EMP pulse to disable the gadgets. This bulletproof camera is genuinely pretty good, and the fact that you can refill them actually makes them better than Valkyrie in some instances. Barbed wire, arguably the least useful of all of these gadgets, not because it's useless, but because all the other ones are so good. The biggest downside of the barbed wire is that they will very easily destroy it, and it doesn't slow them down very much at all. Of course, the big exception being if you're playing with Kaid and you have the Electrica, we'll get to that later, but for the most part, the barbed wire, non-electrified barbed wire, isn't very good, and the barbed wire is going to very easily get destroyed, but it's still better than nothing, obviously. Last but not least, the deployable shield. One of the best secondary gadgets, arguably, out of these three right here, bulletproof camera, barbed wire, deployable shield, I would say that this is the best one. With the deployable shield, you can place it down in front of the hostage, you can place it down in a corner and hide behind it for cover, you can place it sideways in a doorway to stop them from coming in there, which is a strat I'll mention later when we talk about Goyo. But deployable shield, fairly versatile, very useful. Biggest problem is that sometimes, for whatever reason, it gets destroyed, and just literally the enemy's walking up to it or something, it gets destroyed. Maybe it's a frag grenade that destroys it that I can't hear. I do know that sometimes they will throw fire grenades and destroy it.
Granata partita! È il nostro momento, avanti! Dannazio, granata!
And when that happens, that leaves the deployable shield at a disadvantage because the deployable shield is the only secondary gadget that cannot be refilled. So once your deployable shield is gone, it is gone forever. So that is definitely going to leave you at a massive disadvantage. Number 18, Oryx. This is the operator that's all about mobility. The dash is good for getting from place to place very quickly, which can be very crucial when exiting the building, or reinforcing hatches, or moving from one hallway to another. The dash is also great for knocking over enemies when you need to reload, as it's much faster than switching to a secondary or reloading, and especially if that enemy has a shield. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend knocking over all of your enemies, as that kind of leaves you vulnerable, and if they have friends nearby, they're going to shoot you up. But still, the option is there if it makes sense to use it. The extra mobility as well, with the climbing the hatches, makes strategies involving shooting through floors much more easy to pull off, and it also allows you, switch between floors very easily, If you are in a bad situation, you can just drop down the hatch, reload, come back up the hatch, and it's easy peasy. You don't have to run all the way to the stairs. Considering that health is very limited, I would not recommend using his dash to run through walls, but if you're playing with a teammate that can heal, it's a combo that can work pretty well. Despite being somewhat versatile, he's lower on the list because his usefulness is pretty heavily dependent on what site you choose. In some sites, he's basically useless, but other sites, he's pretty alright. You'll want to plan ahead to make the most of him. Even at his best, though, he is very risky. Dashing leaves you vulnerable, and dashing into an enemy when there is a group of enemies all around is a terrible idea, and terrorists always come in groups. While climbing hatches, you're even more vulnerable, and the terrorists have no chill. In a squad, especially with a healer, he'd be much better, but solo, he's risky. Number 17. Valkyrie. With 3 cameras, you can position your cameras such that you can see all possible angles of where the terrorists are coming from, set up your angle in advance, and kill them as soon as you get the chance to. If you're playing in a squad, I would actually rank her quite a bit higher. But for solo, since you have to actively pull out your phone, leaving you vulnerable while you do so, you can definitely leave yourself in vulnerable spots that are very hard to come out of. Now, as long as you are good about positioning your cameras, you shouldn't have to worry too much about getting surprise attacked, but that is easier said than done, of course. And sometimes you literally just don't have enough time to check where all the enemies are. Plus, with proximity alarms existing, or maybe just listening carefully, you can basically get a good idea of where the enemies are coming from anyways. Thankfully, though, you have scans at your proposal. Exposal is what I was trying to say. Thankfully, though, you have scans at your disposal. Switching to your cameras, scanning enemies, and then switching back to kill them, you can even do it through walls, is really fun. It can definitely save you sometimes, especially when you aren't listening to the game. You have to be really skilled to make good use of her, and it's also very heavily map and room dependent, but she is definitely more useful than the default cameras tend to be. The reason why she's not super high up on the list is because of the existence of bulletproof cameras. Bulletproof cameras exist on a lot of different operators, and actually come with a EMP pulse, as we mentioned earlier. Unlike bulletproof cameras, though, Valkyrie can place 3 of them immediately without needing to refill, and they can be placed anywhere, no matter how high, how far away from the objective, and they can be placed in spots that you literally can't walk to where you wouldn't be able to put bulletproof cameras. And they have a wider viewing angle. Though if you plan on playing on normal and you have infinite refills, or you plan on placing your cameras all inside, it might make more sense to just use bulletproof cameras. Number 16. Rook. If you're playing in a squad, he's much, much better. Trust me, I could actually easily recommend him if you're playing in a squad. Especially since it makes it so that you would only go down if you're at low health instead of dying, which is especially useful when you're at higher difficulties when they like to one-shot you. In solo, though, literally all he does is offer 20 extra health, and that's it. It's not a lot, but then again, 20 extra health is actually pretty useful, especially if you're on lower difficulties. I mean, you're at a fairly tanky 145 HP, and, you'll definitely notice how that extra health you're getting will definitely save you a couple of times. But yeah, I would really only ever use him if you're playing on lower difficulties. If you're playing on higher difficulties, that extra health probably won't make a huge difference. Number 15. Smoke. His canisters are very lethal, but he only gets 3. It's pretty useful for buying yourself a few moments, and unlike Tachanka, the radius is big and is likely to kill multiple people, especially because it slows down the enemies every time without any setup needed, and lasts quite a while as well. Of course, you can't throw your canisters nearby the hostage like you can with the Gershmont mines by Ella, but still, at least it actually kills enemies, and quite a lot of them sometimes. The enemies will often walk right into the radius and let themselves die. Not only that, but pulling out and throwing the gadget is very quick, so it's best used when trying to revive the hostage. Number 14. Tachanka. His gadget can be really good for taking down enemies from cover by doing some serious lethal damage. This can either be done as a pre-fire, or to buy you some time to revive the hostage, or reload, or whatever the case may be. Because the shots bounce, you can get it over walls or around corners in areas that would be impossible with smoke's canisters. The problem is that the radius of the fire isn't big, which means it can require multiple shots sometimes, which means more time is required for firing and reloading. Plus, the enemies don't seem to get slowed down by it at all, and will often just walk right over the fire, barely taking any damage, barely giving a care. To make the best of Tachanka, you need to have setups with either barricades and or barbed wire to slow down the enemies enough so that the fire actually kills them. You also need to be very careful about your shot placements because it's somewhat easy to accidentally light the hostage up, and unlike any other gadget, if it lands on the hostage, you can't go back and pick it up before it's too late. Because of the risk and the required extra work, in some instances, you might actually be better off with smoke. But still, you get 14 shots, and the fire can come in clutch and save you while you're in a bad spot. Number 13. Pulse. If you're good at shooting and either just don't want to or just can't listen to the game, it's actually pretty solid. You'll be able to get an idea of where the terrorists are coming from without needing to listen to sound, which is very useful in many instances. Plus, it gives you the ability to have setups for pre-fires and potentially wallbangs. But if you're listening to your game audio, you don't really need him. Pulling out and putting away the cardiac sensor, although not super slow, is most certainly not super fast, and there will be a lot of times where you just have your cardiac sensor in your hand and you're looking at an enemy when you could have just been shooting them. At that point, you might as well just listen to the game audio and kill them, but obviously, sometimes you won't be able to do that. The range isn't very large, so you would only ever want to use it to get a general idea of where the enemies are coming from, and then pull out your weapon as fast as you can. Still, for what he does it pretty well. He would be ranked slightly higher here for squad play, since you're allowed to communicate with your teammate, and your teammate is able to get the kills, and you having the cardiac sensor out in your hand isn't as much as a liability. Number 12. Aruni.
Op 4 has eyes on.
Okay, I know I said I'm only talking about primary gadgets, but for Aruni, I need to cheat and make an exception for her passive. First though, her gates. They only do 30 damage, which although is not useless, isn't great. It does act as a pretty solid indicator for where the terrorists are coming from, while doing some damage. However, it does require you to listen and pay attention, as it doesn't show a notification on the screen when the trap gets disabled. So, it's not much more useful than just listening for footsteps, right? It also slightly reduces visibility, as the gates can sometimes make it harder for you to see through them. Still, since you can keep using her gates infinitely as long as you reset them, she's not too bad. Just gotta be careful about positioning and making sure that you don't have the Syria gates in such a way that they'll block your line of sight. But what really puts her high up on the list is her passive, that allows for infinite, shotgun-sized holes with no depletion of resources. This can be really handy for reshaping the site. The only reason she's not even higher is because depletion of resources is not a real big concern thanks to being able to refill, but if you're on hard or realistic, where you have a limited amount of refills, and you don't want to necessarily use your refills in the early parts of the rounds, this arguably makes her the most efficient when it comes to soft destruction. Because of that, she's in a pretty decent higher upper tier level. Number 11. Melusi. If you can set up your banshees in a specific way, you can severely slow down the terrorists from coming from a specific angle. The loud hum of the banshee is also a really good indicator of their location, much louder than their footsteps might be. In some ways, better than a proximity alarm because the terrorist won't shoot the banshee under any circumstances. But in other ways, kind of worse, because you don't get a notification on the screen when they are slowed down, making the proximity alarm better if you don't have any audio. Slowing the terrorists down and giving away their position isn't hugely impactful, but considering they exist indefinitely and will not be destroyed, you can very easily set them up so that you can kind of funnel them down a small hallway, very slowly, allowing for easy kills, or simply just to buy you some time while you're distracted trying to kill other people, which can be crucial if you're getting attacked from multiple angles. As long as you know what you're doing with a Melusi, or at the very least position them in such a way that you'll actually be able to take advantage of the gadget, she's actually pretty good. Number 10, Echo. Echo has a lot of the same benefits as Valkyrie, but you only get 2 drones instead, and they have to stick to the ceiling or lay on the ground, and they can't go outside. I mean, it sounds like they're worse, but obviously you know where the benefit comes in. The sonic pulses. This sonic pulse is actually pretty damn good. It'll basically stop the enemies from doing whatever they're doing, and they'll just sit there stunned, not able to shoot, not able to react in any way, shape, or form. The fact that you get an infinite amount of sonic pulses with a delay in between a couple of shots, this is what makes Echo so good. If you play to Echo's strength, playing very defensively, you can very easily just wait for the enemies, stun them, and take them out. Alternatively, if you're somewhat far away and want a safe way of neutralizing the enemies, the drones can come in clutch. They will buy you time and make it easy for you to take out the enemies with reduced risk of getting shot yourself, as long as you're good about positioning. Switching to the drones makes you vulnerable, so you have to be very careful about positioning to make sure you don't get shot while stunning enemies. But if you know what you're doing, you can make quick work of any terrorist that comes in your path. Number 9, Mira. Being able to see your enemy's exact position so you can line up your shot and shoot them before they even get to shoot back is just as powerful as it sounds. There's a number of different strategies you could use when it comes to actually how you deploy your mirror window. It could be like on a unreinforced wall, or on a reinforced wall next to an unreinforced wall, or on a reinforced wall with another reinforced wall next to it that has another mirror window. You can also open the mirror window yourself. Just be careful to make sure the enemies don't do it for you. Standing in front of the mirror window may result in this happening sometimes. There's a bunch of different options that you have in order to best make use of your mirror windows. Thankfully, you don't have to worry about the terrorist punching and cracking the glass of your mirror windows, unlike you would in multiplayer, so that's definitely a big bonus. That being said, how useful Mira is to you specifically is quite a bit room dependent, because you kind of have to, see if there are locations where it makes a lot of sense to put a mirror window, and some instances it doesn't make a lot of sense. Another strategy that I forgot to mention is placing your mirror window basically in between 2 walls where there's a little column in the center, where basically if you have it on the edge, the mirror window extends to the other side of the wall, and because of that little column there, that technically gives you more cover, and it makes it a lot easier for you to peer and kill people. Obviously, your viewing angle will be limited, and it will be sometimes difficult to take advantage of this little angle, but if you didn't know about it, now you did. Try it out. It works on only a couple of maps, but still. Number 8, Maestro. It's an infinite ammo laser turret. What more do I need to say? Alright, that's it. Moving on. Number 7. I'm kidding, obviously. Okay, for real though, although this bad boy only really does mild damage, what it's most useful for is gathering intel and distracting enemies. Other than in rare circumstances, upon shooting an enemy with the evil eye, they will drop everything, turn, and focus fire on your turret. This is why you will only ever want to shoot 1 shot at a time, because if the evil eye windows are open, they will most certainly shoot it and destroy your evil eye, so be careful, shoot 1 shot and close it immediately. Hold on to that thought, because it actually appears that they've probably changed that, because I went to, get some bonus footage for the video, and I was testing it to, get them to try and shoot the camera, destroy the camera, and they just wouldn't do it. Like, I would be zapping them over and over again, try to get them to destroy the camera, because I realized I didn't have any footage of them destroying the camera, and they just wouldn't do it. Okay, well, they did manage to destroy it once, but that's it. I only have 1 instance, and I tried to get them to destroy it, and they wouldn't. Also, they seemingly made it so that the terrorists don't crack the glass of the evil eyes anymore, which is actually pretty significant. That's definitely a recent change, because, I definitely remember them being able to crack the glass in crystal guard. But yeah, there we go. That's two things I just only found out about while editing. Now, this enemy will not keep shooting forever, but for quite a while. This distracted enemy can buy you some very valuable time that can be spent on either killing other enemies, or reviving the hostage, or just act as a good distraction to safely dispatch of that enemy yourself. Do be careful about your placements, though. Unlike with the Black Mirrors, the Evil Eyes can be punched by the terrorists, cracking the glass and forcing you to have to open the glass in order to see out. If possible, try placing it high up, or above furniture, or even on a wall that's above an open hatch, that way they can't reach to it and punch it. Even with a cracked glass, the camera is far from useless, but it's obviously preferable to avoid it from getting cracked in the first place. Another thing is that repelling terrorists will not target the Evil Eye, and the Evil Eye can be placed outside. Those two facts combined make it possible for you to completely and entirely kill a repelling terrorist with the Evil Eye alone. That's it, just the Evil Eye shooting at the enemy will potentially kill a terrorist. Since you need to manually fire the laser from your phone, this does leave you incredibly vulnerable while you're doing so. So it's important that you are positioned in such a way that any and all entrances can be seen by at least one Evil Eye, so that you don't get caught off guard while you're trying to, distract people. Number 7. Castle. Castle barricades do a really good job of slowing down enemies, arguably the best about slowing down enemies, and it allows you to shoot their feet and kill them before they can even fight back, as long as you place them in a doorway and not in a window. If you place it in a window, then you can't see your feet, because that's how windows work. This was alright before, but now that these barricades can be replenished at the refill station, this now leaves Castle as one of the best defensive ops ever. Now, you can cover more than just 3 angles at a time, or, I wrote that. At the time I wrote that, I think he had 3, but now he has 4. So that's actually kind of funny. I should probably redo that line then. Now, you can cover more than 4 areas at a time, and even if one of the castle barricades gets destroyed, it can simply be replaced. Although I could honestly recommend him at any difficulty, I would especially want to recommend him at normal, as their infinite refills allow you to very easily heavily defend the location with reduced worries like no other. But even on the harder difficulties, he can still be very useful. He's even more useful in a squad, as you can have multiple people watching multiple entrances. He's only not higher on the list because his usefulness is somewhat site dependent, and with limited refills, you're able to use his gadget somewhat limited, but still. On sites with windows leading directly into the objective, he's arguably less useful since you can't shoot the feet of the terrorists while they're walking in. So make sure that you know which site you're defending and how you're going to defend it before you choose Castle. Number 6. Alibi. Getting the enemies to shoot the Prisma alone is inconsistent at best, as a single enemy won't keep shooting the same Prisma over and over again, and his teammates will often do the same once they find out it's a Prisma. Now, although it's somewhat uncommon for them to shoot the Prismas, what's far more common is for them to just straight up walk right through them. A somewhat recent discovery was made that the terrorists don't seem to shoot the Prisma plates anymore. At all. Meaning they'll just walk right through the Prisma and get spotted. So you can easily see where they're coming from at least 3 different angles. With this fact, you could even potentially shoot them through walls. But of course, with the delay in the pings, that's actually quite difficult, but hey, it's possible. While editing, I realized I never mentioned that you could place them literally nowhere near the objective, and just get a general idea of where they're coming from in advance. You don't have to use them to shoot them through walls, but yeah, you can use it like that. And it's also worth mentioning that you should probably put them in doorways, because, duh. You don't have to necessarily, but it's just a good idea to put them in doorways. They don't even necessarily need to be like the small doorways. They can be double-sized doorways, and as long as you put it in the center, it should be fine. I don't know why I didn't mention that, but yeah, there you go. Number 5. Goyo. The shields are very versatile. There's essentially 3 major ways of using them. I actually found out about the 3rd major way just recently, so let me talk about the 2 original ways first. They were basically just either protecting the hostage or protecting the player. That's it. It's actually a pretty smart strategy to have one shield protecting the hostage, and the other shield in a corner for you to sit behind and protect yourself. The terrorist will not specifically target the big giant explosive red canister on the back, but might accidentally shoot it if they're trying to either shoot you or the hostage, so be careful about your placements. You could also use both shields to protect yourself, or both shields to protect the hostage, if in some instances that makes sense. Now, the recently discovered strategy completely changed the way that Goyo is played, in that if you place the Vulcan shields sideways in doorways, seems to be most doorways, for whatever reason, the terrorist will not jump over the shield. They will just reroute to a different entry point. This strategy is insane, but the only problem is that the usefulness is map and room dependent. Sometimes there are more than 2 entry points, and this simply just isn't a viable strategy. Also, if the hostage is placed in the middle of the room, where they can very easily get shot from the doorway, then obviously his usefulness will be limited in that regard. Still, this is an amazing strategy, and really puts Goyo in a league of his own. In some instances, he's technically the number 1, but most of the time he's technically lower, but I just decided to put it in a middle ground here, so this is why he's at number 5. I would like to bring to your attention one infamous example, that being in Radio Room on Kanal. This room is specifically good for Goyo. I made a whole video on that. Go check it out if you want to see a little bit more into that, but that room in particular is insane with Goyo. Now, under most circumstances, you're not using the shields with the intention of blowing them up, so it's fair to say that the deployable shields are just better. But the fact that he gets 2 is what really opens up all of the possibilities. Number 4, Clash. Clash's shield is the ultimate distraction and will waste the... I like how I put waste in the text. Hold on. Now, Clash is obviously the big major exception when it comes to not talking about primary weapons, because it's Clash. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about her primary weapon. How am I not going to? Anyways, Clash's shield is the ultimate distraction, and will basically waste all of the ammo from all of the terrorists within shooting range. And when I say waste ammo, by the way, I mean just until they have to reload. They don't technically ever run out of ammo, just for clarification. This essentially gives you the ability to, in real time, scope out any locations, and if need be, switch to your secondary weapon and take care of any and all threats. The switching time is slow, so you have to be strategic about your movements and position. But if you play to Clash's strength, slowing down a large group of enemies to buy yourself some time, her shield can be used to do things that no other operator can. Another huge benefit of the shield is that it's on your back when your secondary is out. This is a critical and crucial detail, as it makes reviving the hostage far, far safer than it would be with any other operator. If you're playing with a squad, Clash can easily carry the whole team to victory, and would even be higher up on the list. But that being said, just solo Clash is very good. Number 3, Doc. Now, Doc actually was originally the best on the list when he was the only healer on defense, back when I made my original, video that I never uploaded. He was number 1. Let's talk about it, though. Doc can heal 40 health to any player, including himself, but he only gets 5 shots. Still, though, considering he is one of the only operators that can actually heal players, that already makes him one of the best. Especially noteworthy is that unlike any other operator, he can heal himself when down, making him particularly useful in solo, whereas otherwise, if you were any other operator, you would just die. And especially on harder difficulties when the terrorists have such hard-hitting weapons. Plus, when you're absolutely desperate, the stim can be used on the hostage, allowing you to revive the hostage from range if you don't have time to go over and revive the hostage yourself. But this should only be reserved when the surrounding terrorists are killed and the hostage is on the brink of death. Otherwise, save the stims for yourself. In most situations, if you're at low health, it actually makes more sense to, instead of healing yourself while standing, just let yourself get downed by either jumping off or getting shot and going into safety, and reviving yourself with the stim. This will actually give you 75 health instead of 40 plus how much ever health you had. I would argue he's more useful in solo than in a squad, but he's still useful either way. You can also use your stims to overheal if you know you're about to get into a big gunfight. Though, honestly, I wouldn't recommend that because you're basically just losing extra health that you could have used when you knew you were about to take damage. But if that's something that you do want to do, Doc gives you that option. Number 2, Kaid. The range of the affected barbed wire... The range of the affected area of the electrical The range of the affected area of the Electroclaw is notable. This allows you to safely store your Electroclaw on one side of the wall, while on the other side lies some barbed wire. This is important because even when the barbed wire is destroyed, the claw still exists, unlike how it works with Bandit. This allows you to easily kill an insane amount of terrorists without even seeing them. If needed, it could also be attached to a ceiling hatch, literally making the access point impossible. Or it could be set on up to 3 walls, essentially cutting off an entire wall. Though this is arguably not the best use of this gadget, but sometimes you can put barbed wire on the other side and double up in that way. How useful his gadget is slightly depends on the room, because if there are more than 2 entrances, you would still have to worry about the enemies coming, but still, because of his versatility and ease of use, he absolutely would have deserved the #1 spot, at least until #1, Thunderbird. Not even a doubt in my mind. Thunderbird provides infinite health and overheals to any players within range. It's not even a competition, like, really. I can honestly, genuinely recommend her on every map, in every location, with every setup. The only disadvantage she has over Doc is that unlike Doc, she can't revive herself in solo, making her a bit harder on harder difficulties. But rest assured, she is a slam dunk choice regardless of difficulty, and if you're playing strictly to win, this is who you are best off playing in almost every scenario. That being said, just because she's #1 doesn't mean that there aren't scenarios where other operators are more useful. In some rooms, Goyo and Kaid are unstoppable beasts that make realistic so easy even a toddler can do it. But since that only applies to specific situations, Thunderbird definitely deserves the top spot. I know she's already #1, but I would put her even higher on the list if that was physically possible if you're playing in squad play, since downed teammates can crawl to the Kona stations and revive themselves. Well, that's it. That's the end of my list. I finally finished the video. I know. It's taken me so long to actually edit this video together. I was hoping I would get it done by the end of 2021, and that did not happen. But, the video, I'm really happy with how the video turned out. It's taken me a long time. I wanted to get as much footage as possible. I mean, I have 220 videos that are all, like, in some way, shape, or form in this video, and I, edit it together. I tried to go and show examples of all of the things that was happening. If I would explain it, I'd be like, showing footage of what was happening. Also, do give this video a like. Nitro saw that like button. You already know I don't ask for likes that much, but this video definitely deserves it. To end off this video, here's a little outro that I made back in 2021 before the video was really finished. Anyways, guys, I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. It has been quite the undertaking. I've spent multiple attempts trying to make this video, multiple recordings, multiple different sessions. I've gone back and forth. I have like another video that I'm probably going to link where you can kind of see what I was trying to do with the original video before I scrapped it. And I decided just this month that, alright, I'm just going to completely scrap the whole thing and then restart from scratch. Going to be getting some extra bonus footage from the high caliber season. I hope that you guys have a wonderful Christmas or Kwanzaa or whatever holiday you celebrate, I don't even know, and also a wonderful New Year's. And I say that, and now that I think about it, this video is probably going to come out in 2022. I don't think I'll be able to finish this before the end of the year, but who knows? Maybe I will. Anyways, I appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you haven't seen the Attacker video, go check it out. I'm going to be making an updated variant somewhat soon to show the new bouncing changes and whatnot. Check out the my original attempt as well that I scrapped. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye. Is basically just as useless as Dokebe. It's funny that in the same operation, White Noise, that they had both of their operators be literally completely useless in Terrorist Hunt. They're both equally as ineffective. The fact that you get an infinite amount of sonic pulses with a delay in between a couple of shots, this is what makes Echo This is what makes Echo. This is what makes Echo. This is. Oh my God! Why is this such a difficult sentence to say? This is what makes Echo. Fuck. This is what makes Echo so good. If you play.